I'm a fan of the original Incredibles film. Even though I never saw it in theaters, my first experience was with the DVD, and I really fell in love with the film. Considering this film came out around the millennium renaissance of superhero films, with films like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy and the Bryan Singer X-Men films being the primaries, it can be fairly easy for me as a 7-year-old to get attached to them so quickly. Looking back on the original, I noticed there was more details in the subtext. Under the guise of a Fantastic Four family feature, the film focuses on how superheroes have become gods in some ways. Heck, even Edna Mode says that she used to make costumes that were designed for gods. To add to this film, the whole conflict between Syndrome and Mr. Incredible can only encapsulate the extreme fan mentality, but it also is a parable for Kronos' story in Greek mythology. And this is where we get into The Incredibles 2. To see the film come to light after 14 years can have its downsides. Waiting for a film that people have been waiting for years could make the final product feel like the sophomore slump of a sequel. This goes especially to a film highly accepted as The Incredibles. I went to see The Incredibles 2 in a double feature on Wednesday, June 13th, and I truly did get my money's worth in experience. The first thing I noticed was that from the first and the second film, there is a smooth transition between the two. I'd say that this is the best way to experience a film. Heck, if you took out the title credits of The Incredibles 2 and the end credits of Incredibles 1 and you edited them together, it would feel like a natural continuing story. And that's about it. The only thing that there would be different, though, is that there is two qualities of aesthetics that are hugely different, seeing how the animation is more crisp in the sequel. And that brings me to what the second film is truly about. The Incredibles 2 follows immediately after the events of the first film, when an eccentric telecommunications CEO and his sister look to Mr. Incredible, Elastigirl, and Frozone to bring superheroes back into the spotlight to get superheroes legalized, in a sense. Elastigirl gets chosen for the initial wave of good publicity, considering her damage records are the lowest of the three. This leaves Mr. Incredible to take care of the kids, whether it is to be with Dash's homework or Violet's boy problems. However, the challenge will be to take care of the wild card of the bunch, Jack. But as publicity is getting good for supers to bring legalization to the courts, a new villain arrives by the name of Screenslaver, a hypnotic villain that aims to take down Elastigirl's efforts as he aims to prove that superheroes make normal people weak. The Incredibles 2 is a good, enjoyable film, and I had an incredibly good blast with the film, to be honest. As I mentioned before, the animation, particularly with Elastigirl's animation, are hugely upgraded and looks slick. There are even times that Elastigirl's powers put Mr. Fantastic to shame. It is just so good. I also found myself mesmerized by hair at one point. I mean, friggin' hair. It's really interesting to see. The themes of the original get a new lens to view from of the form of the villain's plan. The story, I'd say, is not as good as the first film, but it gets near it. I liked all the stuff with Bob taking care of the kids, kind of challenging the sense of like, oh, well, you don't necessarily need to always be a superhero to be super. Sometimes the best kind of, like, supers, in a sense, like, you could be a hero, but you don't always have to be that hero. Sometimes being a good dad is just as good as being a superhero. And that's what I really enjoyed about this film, is that it just kind of takes that, what we established from the first film, and flips it. And it doesn't do this like, oh, well, we're just going to flip the script from the last film because that's the laziest way we could do things. They actually took some time and effort into developing this new story. And again, I really did like that. But I'd have to say, though, the weakest aspect about this film is the Screenslaver. I mean, from the initial setup, we automatically know who it is. It's fairly obvious, and it's not as good as Syndrome, right? But I kind of, as I rewatched it again recently, I found myself not exactly caring all that much about the villain. Like, I understand that there's a common sort of thing. It's like, oh, well, we have to make the villains just as good as the heroes. But what if the heroes are good enough for the rest of the film to be good? I mean, yes, sure, we have our great villains too, and we want to enjoy villains as much as our heroes. And there are genuinely good villains in the MCU that have been, becoming more recent and more recurrent as the newer films keep going on. Heck, even recently we had Thanos, one of the most popular villains ever in the MCU, and it's grossed $2 billion at the box office. So clearly, villains can be profitable if they're done right. But I'd say The Incredibles is kind of a rare exception, because I really do like the family dynamic. I liked everything about it. It's just, for me, like, as much as I can understand the screenslaver's sort of plight in all of this sort of family dynamic that this villain has with supers, I understand it, but the mystery behind who the screenslaver was fairly obvious, and it was just kind of, it was the weakest part of the film. Again, as much as I can overlook it, I still can't say it isn't a problem. Another thing that I kind of found weak was kind of the new heroes. As much as it's great to see the new powers on display, especially Void's powers with all the different teleportations and stuff, there's just no characterization for them. I'd even go as far as to say that most of the new characters are one-dimensional, save for who the real villain of the film is. It is a bit disappointing, but most of this can be nitpicks, since some of these characters don't play heavily into the main plot. I like how the film continues the broad aspects from the original. The crazy gadgets, the villains are back, and Screenslaver could have been a villain from the early Bond years, hypnotizing people to do villainy and all. This truly feels like a middle film in a franchise, with elements being revisited from the original and not exactly meeting all expectations. The animation is crisp and fluid, the story is enjoyable and fun sequences that make a ticket purchase worth it. If you are a fan of the original, you may like this film. If you were in the middle about the original Incredibles, I don't know if you will like this one. If you need a recommendation for this weekend for your family or friends, this is definitely the film to see. I'm going to give The Incredibles 2 a B+. And now let's move on to a movie based off of the name Tag. And also, this is probably where Hawkeye has been the entire time, just screwing around with his friends from Spokane, Washington. To start off, friendship is a weird thing. Friends can do dumb things. Most commonly, friends get matching tattoos, blow money in Vegas, etc. But all that is incomparable to the subject of this film. Tag is based off of the true life story of Gonzaga University students who spent 30 years playing tag with each other. Surprisingly, this isn't the weirdest concept I've ever seen to be turned into a movie. Looking at you, Truth or Dare. It is quite funny how this year we had multiple films based off of or centered around games. We had Game Night, Truth or Dare, Rampage, Tomb Raider, and now Tag. What I really enjoy about this film is the camaraderie amongst the cast. I could feel that some of the closeness that made the original story the film was based off of so compelling. All of the headlining actors, John Hamm, Hannibal Buress, Ed Helms, Jeremy Renner, etc., have a good chemistry as friends trying to tag Jeremy's character before he retires. The film has its funny moments and some surprising jokes that took me off guard and left me questioning, did they really just joke about that? Tag is truly unabashed by its concept. It turns it up to 11. However, the film has its faults. There is a journalist who writes the story as it goes along, interviewing the different characters, and I felt like the character was out of place in the story. I didn't feel like she had much of a purpose other than to repeat what just happened at certain scenes. There is a great reason why the game is being played in the film, and while I love the message behind it, emotionally, it didn't hit as hard as it needed to. I'm not knocking the twist, but it didn't hit me as hard as it could have been. I still love the message, though. In the end, I felt Tag is an enjoyable film and will be liked by some. I will admit it is a bit disposable, but I think the message it strives to go for will endure for years to come. Tag gets a B-. And thank you guys so much for watching my video, and look out for my final review, which will be on Monday, I believe, called Animal House. And I put a little bit more effort into that production than what you see here. Just my microphone up here and all that. So we'll see you on Monday. Peace.